Brother Robbie and I, we're not nostalgic about some grand moment in the past when the university embodied all this rich Socratic energy. No way. No way. The university has always been driven too often by cowardly presidents who capitulate to power. Brother Robbie and I are calling for the reaffirmation of the Socratic ideal of serious argument across the board. But it has always failed, and it probably always will fail. We just have to look at the nature of the failure now. The nature of the failure now is just so deep. There's a moral and spiritual bankruptcy in so many of these universities, and it needs to be recast.
I have a question for you guys. It's about truth. So you want ideological or political diversity in the pursuit of truth. And I'm just wondering if that's not somehow a contradiction. I mean, if I thought capitalism was morally wrong, and I thought that claim about the moral status of capitalism was true, why would I, encourage the teaching of free market economics and ensure that I had a representative or a diverse engagement with that? I mean, in the sciences, we don't have the equivalent of ideological diversity. What we have is the community gets behind the best assessment that can be made at the current time of what is true. And it excludes consciously flat earthers and others who are wrong, quote unquote, demonstrably wrong about their position. Why isn't something like that also true about if I thought a genocide was being perpetrated and I said so and I believe that, why wouldn't I want to preclude people who were advocating for the genocide? If I thought racism was being furthered by diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, et cetera, you see where I'm going. I'm asking, what role does judgment of truth play in constituting the university in the first place? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Oh, no, indeed. It's a wonderful question, though, brother. But I think I like to begin looking at this from the vantage point of what happens in a culture when truth collapses and when courage and trust collapse, because truth itself is bigger than all of us, and you have to have enough trust in your interlocutors who are speaking from some vantage point of integrity for the conversation to continue in the pursuit of truth. Now, see, we're in a situation now where people don't trust each other. And if you don't trust each other, you can't have a conversation. Well, truth is not about, some kind of unmediated access. It's only by means of adducement of evidence and argument and vision and story and analysis and symbols deployed to try to get people to see things they didn't see before and to convince people to convince things that they were not convinced before. So you can have a long, sustained argument with a follower of Adam Smith as opposed to Ricardo, as opposed to Marx, as opposed to Leontief, as opposed to Samuelson, as opposed to Laurie. I mean, economics itself doesn't have one paradigm. You got a whole host of folks. They don't read Joseph Schumpeter anymore. They don't read Carl Polanyi anymore. How come? There's no deep historical sense when it comes to economics. It's been mathematicized. That's a certain kind of bias. There's some insights there. Whole lot of shortcomings and blindnesses with quantitative analysis vis-a-vis economics. So even in the science, even in the physics, you got Einsteinians against the followers of wave and particle theory. They're going at each other's throats. Thomas Kuhn taught us that in Science Structure Scientific Revolution, right? The problem is that no matter what discipline is, if you don't have truth operating and the people are not courageous enough to raise the issues and be unpopular in their critique, and everybody just wants to fit in, everybody just wants to go along with the dominant paradigm, then you no longer have the very preconditions for truth. And one last point, too, I think it's very important for us to keep in mind that Brother Robbie and I, we're not nostalgic about some grand moment in the past when the university embodied all this rich Socratic energy. No way. No way. The university has always been driven too often by cowardly presidents who capitulate to power. Look at Columbia pushing out Charles Beard in World War II. Look at their response to McCarthyism in the 60s at Harvard. booting out Paul Sweezy and so forth. Why is it that we had to wait till Kilson to get tenure at Harvard in 1969, or Glenn Lowry at 33 years old get tenure in economics? We had some Negroes and black folk who could have got tenure before that. They had certain racism going on. We have to be honest about that. Martha Nussbaum becomes what? The first Society of Fellow in 1973, and the great organization is founded by Alfred Whitehead in 1933. 40 years, you got to wait for any sister to become a member of the Society of Fellows where Kuhn and Quine and all of these giants can be a part of? No. The university has never been able to fully enact the ideal. Brother Robbie and I are calling for the reaffirmation of the Socratic ideal of serious argument across the board. But it has always failed, and it probably always will fail. We just have to look at the nature of the failure now. The nature of the failure now is just so deep. There's a moral and spiritual bankruptcy in so many of these universities, and it needs to be recast.
I really hope to see that there can be some kind of generational shift. I mean, all of the efforts that you're talking about sound absolutely fantastic. I've been rather naive about many of them. It can be dismaying to see that for so many people with PhDs now, their impression is that to engage in the life of the mind is to critique, as they put it, power differentials. For them, that's what being smart is. That is what the quest for the truth consists of, and nothing else. They wouldn't recognize themselves in the charge, but then how many of us do when we're criticized from the outside? But for them, this thing they call critique is seeking the truth, and they don't realize what a narrow band of truth that is. And, a lot of them now, the age that I am, I remember when those people didn't have gray hair yet. But now they have gray hair and they're controlling hiring. They are quite certain and they are quite proud of their sense of what the truth is. And they pass it on to their grad students. They don't admit grad students who aren't with that program. They think they've found truth. They know that Stalin didn't, but they think that they're at the end of time and they did. And goodness, they control an awful lot. It scares me. I've seen my own subfield basically just destroyed by that kind of frame of mind, Creole studies. And so I worry. There are times when I just want to grab my marbles and go home, but that frankly isn't constructive. And so I really hope that this works and that people can listen if there's anybody left who can.